Before we dive in, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt like the world around you is holding a secret that only you know? Something so powerful, so forbidden, that it pulls you in with an irresistible force? Well, this story is one of those secrets. It's a story about betrayal, desire, and the moment when you choose to walk down a path that you can never return from. In this confession, I'm about to share something with you that may be shocking, but it's the truth. I cheated on my husband with his son, and what happened afterward was nothing like what I had imagined. But here's the twist. He actually thanked me later. This isn't just another cheating story. This is the real story of how emotions, guilt, and pleasure tangled together to create a forbidden love that neither of us could escape. Now, before I get into all the details, I want you to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Trust me, this is one story you won't want to stop listening to. So, are you ready to hear the truth? The whole truth? I can still feel the rush, that moment everything shifted in my life. For years, my marriage to Rick had been, well, routine. A monotonous, predictable existence that suffocated every ounce of passion I had once known. It was the kind of life where you stop asking yourself if you're happy and just settle. But then, Jake, Rick's son, came back home after his breakup, and everything changed. The quiet, conflicted man in front of me was no longer just Rick's son. He was someone who made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. It started with a simple glance, a fleeting moment of eye contact, and I knew, right then, something forbidden was simmering beneath the surface. We didn't speak about it, not once, but in the way Jake lingered in the doorway, the way he stood just a bit too close, it was clear something unspoken had begun. It wasn't just an innocent glance. It was desire that shouldn't exist in the home I shared with Rick. And yet it did. This wasn't some fleeting attraction. It was something deeper, something I couldn't ignore. My mind, despite all logic, started creating scenarios where this unspoken connection could grow into something more. Every touch, every accidental brush of his hand against mine, only confirmed it. I was being drawn into a dangerous world of emotional betrayal, and I couldn't seem to escape. It wasn't just a passing moment. It became an obsession, a forbidden confession that was so overwhelming I couldn't turn away. I tried convincing myself that it was just a momentary lapse, that I was just seeking an escape from the dullness of marriage. But it wasn't. It was a real story of infidelity, a moment that had me questioning everything I thought I knew about loyalty and commitment. Jake's touch was magnetic, his presence intoxicating. As much as I hated myself for it, the more I indulged in this forbidden love, the more I lost control. And then came the guilt, the shame. But the desire was so much stronger, pulling me into a world of silent affairs and secret seduction that I knew would destroy everything. I couldn't stop. Not yet. I could feel my life unraveling, the silent betrayal eating at me from within. With every glance, every stolen moment, I was becoming someone else. It felt like a dangerous game, and I couldn't tell if I was winning or losing. I was lying to Rick, lying to myself, but it didn't matter. The connection with Jake, the desire, the thrill of something forbidden, it consumed me. And then, after a particularly heated moment, I caught myself thinking, what if I let this go further? It felt like a forbidden confession waiting to happen, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to admit it. But I couldn't stop. What I didn't know was how much deeper I was about to fall. and just how much that desire would change everything. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Jake's kiss, the one that had been lingering in the air between us, had stolen my breath. It had started with a glance, and now it had escalated to something far beyond my control. His lips on mine, his hands that pulled me in with a quiet intensity. I felt a mix of guilt and pleasure that clashed inside me, and for a brief second, I thought I might stop, walk away from this web I was tangled in. But the pull was too strong. "This feels wrong, doesn't it?" he whispered after the kiss, and in that moment, I realized that he wasn't the only one battling with his conscience. The thrill of betrayal was undeniable, and yet, I couldn't deny how it made me feel alive. The temptation was too powerful. I knew it wasn't right. I had promised Rick my loyalty, my heart. But with Jake, something shifted. Something I couldn't explain. It wasn't just the physical attraction. It was emotional, raw, and full of secrets. I was betraying Rick, yes, but I was also betraying the woman I thought I was. This wasn't just a forbidden affair. It was a silent affair, a connection built on secrecy and desire. The pleasure I felt with Jake was intoxicating, and yet it was always tempered by guilt, pulling me in different directions. I wanted to stop, but I didn't. The pleasure of our stolen moments kept me coming back for more, and I couldn't seem to break free. But then came the reality check, the guilt that made me pause. How was I living with myself? Each stolen kiss, each touch in the dark, felt like a secret I couldn't share with anyone. It wasn't just about the physical act anymore. It was about the emotional betrayal that had taken root in my heart. I had crossed a line I never thought I would, and yet I couldn't stop. I was addicted to the rush, addicted to the feeling of being desired in a way I hadn't felt in years. I could feel the weight of it on my shoulders, and I was certain that it would all come crashing down sooner or later. But for now, I drowned in the pleasure, and the guilt remained a distant whisper. Every time Jake looked at me, I felt it again. The heat, the tension. There was something forbidden, something dangerously intoxicating about what we were doing. And then I would look at Rick, and the guilt would return, overwhelming me. It was a constant push and pull, an emotional roller coaster I couldn't get off. But in those moments with Jake, the world seemed to stop. I forgot about the consequences, about the guilt. I only felt the connection between us, the chemistry that kept pulling me deeper. But what would happen if Rick found out? What would happen if this pleasure turned into something worse? I couldn't stop, but the question lingered. How far was I willing to go? Rick had started to notice. It wasn't obvious at first, just little things, like how I'd become distant, how I wasn't as affectionate as I used to be. But then, there were the small details. Jake's quiet mood swings, his sudden absences, and the way I'd leave the room a little too quickly whenever Rick came near. The questions started to pile up. "What's going on with you two?" Rick asked one evening, his voice laced with concern. I said nothing. I didn't have to. I could feel the weight of my betrayal in the silence between us, in the way Rick looked at me, like he knew something wasn't right, but couldn't quite figure it out. I had become the perfect actor in this twisted play, and I was playing my role too well. What bothered me wasn't the guilt I was carrying, it was the feeling of being exposed. Every time I looked at Rick, I wondered if he could see through the facade, if he could feel the disconnect between us. The emotional betrayal was hanging in the air like a thick fog, and I couldn't shake it. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. The desire I felt for Jake still burned inside me, and despite the growing suspicion in Rick's eyes, I pushed forward. In some twisted way, I wanted Rick to know, wanted him to catch me, wanted to see his face when he realized what I had done. It wasn't just the act of cheating, it was the emotional turmoil of living this double life. And then one night, Rick confronted me again. This time, his voice trembled with fear. "I know something's wrong. What's going on, really?" The words stung, but I said nothing. I couldn't tell him the truth. How could I? How could I confess this to the man who had trusted me, the man I had promised to be faithful to? But even as he questioned me, the only thing I could think about was Jake. The way his touch lingered on my skin, the way his eyes had devoured me in that moment we shared. I could still feel his hands on me, the intensity of that silent affair that had become my secret. The guilt gnawed at me, but the desire, the craving for Jake, was far stronger. I could see it in Rick's eyes. He suspected something. Maybe he didn't know what, but he knew something wasn't right. And I hated that I couldn't tell him the truth. But there was a part of me deep inside that didn't want to. There was a part of me that enjoyed the tension, the secrecy. The forbidden nature of this affair had become its own reward. Every time Rick questioned me, it was like he was unknowingly pushing me closer to Jake, forcing me to confront the choices I had made. But how far would I go before it all came crashing down? That night, Rick reached for me. It wasn't the usual gesture, a tired, obligatory touch, but something different, something more. He was desperate for something we had lost, something that had slipped through our fingers over the years. As his hand slid across my skin, I froze. I didn't pull away, not because I didn't feel the old spark. It was there, hidden beneath layers of resentment and guilt, but because I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I wasn't the same woman I had been when we first met. I had changed, and so had my desires. I wasn't just Rick's wife anymore. I was someone who had tasted the forbidden, someone who knew what it felt like to be truly desired, in ways I hadn't even known I craved. There was a moment of hesitation in Rick's touch, like he knew something was off, but didn't know what. He pulled me closer, trying to reignite something that had been gone for too long. But the truth was, I was no longer the woman he had married. Something had shifted inside me, something I couldn't go back from. I had become stronger, more in control, and with that came a power I hadn't known I had. The seduction had changed, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was the one in charge. The marriage that had once been about silent compromise, about staying together despite everything, was now a game of dangerous seduction. I could feel it, the way Rick needed me, how his desire for me had resurfaced, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to give him what he was asking for anymore. I wasn't sure what it was. Was it the guilt of betraying Rick with his own son? Was it the emotional chaos that had consumed me? Or was it just the power I now held over my own desires? But as Rick's lips brushed mine, I found myself pulling away, just enough to make him question it. I could feel his confusion, his desperation, and yet, a part of me wanted him to realize that I had already made my choice. I wasn't his anymore, not in the way I used to be. And maybe that was the most dangerous part of it all. Rick's desire had awakened something in me that I hadn't expected. But now I was the one making the rules. The forbidden confession, the one I had been carrying for so long, was slowly finding its way to the surface. But I wasn't ready yet to give it up. Rick wanted more from me, but I wasn't sure I was ready to give it to him. Not the way he expected. And as I felt his fingers trail across my skin, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the moment I would slip, the moment where I'd be forced to confront everything I had done? Or was this just another game, a dangerous, seductive game that was just beginning? As Rick pulled me closer, A part of me wanted to give in, to let him reclaim me. But another part of me, maybe the most honest part, knew I couldn't. Because I wasn't just Rick's wife anymore. I had become someone else, someone more dangerous. And I wasn't sure if it was just another dinner, or so I tried to convince myself. Rick, Jake, and Tyler, Jake's best friend, gathered around the table, laughing, drinking, the usual polite conversation filling the air. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But beneath the clinking of glasses and the casual remarks, something darker was at play. As I sat there, pretending to be the wife, the mother, the dutiful hostess, my mind was elsewhere. Every glance I exchanged with Jake felt like an electric charge, a silent agreement between us that nobody else could understand. My heart raced with each passing moment, my breath shallow as I navigated this web of desire and secrecy. I could see the way Rick looked at me, a mixture of concern and affection. He had no idea what was simmering just beneath the surface, and yet, a part of me wanted him to find out. It wasn't enough to hide anymore. I was slipping, losing myself in the pleasure of playing this game, the forbidden seduction that had taken root in me. And then there was Tyler, who seemed to notice more than he let on. He was quiet, observant, but I could feel his eyes on me from across the table. Did he know? Did he suspect the tension that hung in the air? Or was he just another pawn in this twisted game of emotional betrayal? The laughter continued, but it felt distant, hollow. I was no longer present in the conversation. My thoughts were on Jake, on what we had shared, on what was coming next. Every touch, every whisper, was becoming a dangerous game I couldn't stop playing. And as I made eye contact with Jake across the table, I saw it in his eyes, the same burning desire, the same knowledge that what we were doing was wrong, but neither of us cared. The secret we shared was heavier than the weight of the world, and yet, it felt like the only thing keeping me alive. Rick and Tyler continued their chatter, but I was lost in the darkness of what we had created. And as the night wore on, I could feel the tension building to a breaking point. By the end of the evening, the air was thick with unsaid words. Rick, Jake, and Tyler. All of them were here, but none of them knew what was really happening. The game was getting more dangerous, and I was playing it to the fullest. I was dancing on the edge of disaster, and yet, a part of me didn't want it to stop. Each look, each stolen moment, was drawing me deeper into a world of temptation and secrets. And in the silence between the words, I could feel it, the desire, the guilt, the power I held over them all. But I was playing with fire, and I couldn't tell how long it would be before it all came crashing down. The night had reached a fever pitch. The quiet tension in the room was now palpable, each of us playing our roles, pretending everything was normal when we all knew the truth was anything but. Jake, Rick, and Tyler, 3 men, and I, the woman at the center of it all. It wasn't just a game anymore. It had evolved into something more complex, something darker, where every glance, every touch held a secret of its own. The power I had over them, over their desires, their emotions, was intoxicating. I was controlling the narrative, but in the process, I was losing myself. I was no longer just the wife, the mother, the woman I once was. I had become something more dangerous. I was the one leading them into temptation, into this web of seduction and betrayal. And none of them seemed able to resist. As the evening unfolded, I could see it in their eyes. Rick, the man who had once been my partner in everything, was oblivious, trapped in the illusion of normalcy. But I could feel the shift in him. His desperation to reclaim what we had lost was evident in every touch, every word. Jake, on the other hand, was consumed by something darker.
He wanted me.
He needed me. And Tyler, the outsider, watched in silence, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it. I wasn't just playing a game anymore. I was orchestrating a sensual triangle, pulling all of them deeper into my world of emotional and physical power. And with each passing moment, I became more aware of the hold I had over them. It was a delicate dance, one where the stakes were higher than any of them realized. Jake was consumed with lust, his emotions tangled with guilt, and Rick was desperate to reclaim something he thought he had lost. But Tyler, the quiet observer, seemed to understand more than he let on. His eyes followed me, a mix of curiosity and desire hidden beneath the surface. What did he know? Was he aware of the forbidden seduction that had taken root between Jake and me? Or was he just another pawn in my game, caught in the web of desire and betrayal I had woven? The room was charged with tension, and yet no one spoke the truth. We were all playing our roles, dancing around the edges of a secret we couldn't escape. In the silence, the truth hung in the air. 3 men, 1 woman, each of them trapped in their own desires, their own illusions. But I was the one in control. I had led them to this moment, and now there was no turning back. The boundaries had been crossed, and there was no undoing what had been done. As the night wore on, the desire, the guilt, and the power I held over them became more pronounced. I was living a life of emotional betrayal, one that would shatter everything once the truth came to light. But for now, I was enjoying the control, the forbidden power that came with it. And as I looked at them, each of them lost in their own emotions, I realized one thing. None of them could escape the game I had created. The night reached its climax, but not in the way any of us had anticipated. Each man was overcome with a different emotion. Rick with guilt, Jake with raw desire, and Tyler with confusion, unable to understand the depths of what was happening. It was a silent storm, swirling beneath the surface, ready to break. As the tension in the room reached its peak, I stood in the center, watching them, feeling the weight of their emotions pressing down on me. And yet I felt no fear. I had been preparing for this moment for so long, playing my part, living the lie. But now, standing there, watching the men I had entangled in my web, I realized something profound. It wasn't about them anymore.
It was about me.
I could feel the power shifting. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the consequences. I wasn't worried about the guilt or the shame. I had embraced the truth within me. I wasn't just the woman caught in a forbidden affair. I was the one who had chosen this path, who had taken control of my own desires. I could see it now. This wasn't just a story of infidelity, of betrayal. It was a story of emotional exposure, of a woman finally stepping into her own truth, no longer hiding behind the mask of perfection and loyalty. I had crossed a line, yes, but in doing so, I had discovered a power I never knew I possessed, the power to choose, to lead, to confess without fear. As I looked at each of them, I could see it, the struggle within them. Rick, with his guilt, his desperation to hold onto what he thought we had. Jake, with his unspoken yearning, his need for something that could never be fully realized. And Tyler, the silent observer, who was now beginning to question everything.
But me?
I stood there, unshaken, owning every moment. I had already accepted the consequences in my heart, even if I hadn't fully admitted them to the world. I was no longer the victim. the one being swept along by circumstances. I had become the master of my own fate. The secret was no longer just a burden. It was a confession I had made to myself long before any of them would ever understand. The room fell silent, and in that moment, I realized something else, that I wasn't just revealing the truth to them. I was revealing it to myself. All the guilt, the shame, the fear of being exposed, it no longer mattered. I had learned the most important lesson of all, that I, and I alone, had the power to define my story. No matter what happened next, no matter how the pieces fell, I would no longer let anyone else control my narrative. And as the night ended, I knew that the game had changed. I had chosen my truth, and no one could take that from me. So, here we are, at the crossroads of betrayal, desire, and emotional upheaval. The truth is, everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and intimacy was shattered the moment I made that choice. And yet, in the chaos of it all, I realized something important. Sometimes, we need to embrace the truth about ourselves, no matter how painful or uncomfortable it may be. You might be sitting there, thinking, what would I have done in her shoes? The truth is, we all make choices that define us, and sometimes those choices lead us to a place we never expected. So, ask yourself, are you living the life you truly want? Or are you hiding behind a mask, playing a role that no longer fits? It's never too late to take control of your own story and make the choice that aligns with your truth. If anything from this story resonated with you, I want you to leave a comment below. Let's talk about it. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation, or are you struggling with something like this right now? I want to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real stories, and make sure you turn on notifications. The next step in your journey is just a click away. Remember, the power to change your life lies in your hands. Don't be afraid to make the choice that will set you free.